If there is one thing that comes up on a regular basis, and I'm talking like multiple times a week when I'm working with clients, it's questions around email. Should I send the email? What kind of email? How do I handle this email situation? How can I get myself to send emails? Like all the questions about email and email marketing. And as a brand messaging specialist who works with coaches, consultants, and creative professionals to grow their business through their messaging and marketing so they can win with their words, email is just an inevitable part of the conversation. And so I want to go into some of the things to think about when it comes to email, particularly if you are not on top of your email game like you wish you were. And of course, this is stuff that I have learned through many years of running email marketing for lots of different clients as well as myself. So here's the things that I've learned. I think like just some of the key takeaways when it comes to doing better with your email. But before I go into that, I just want to tell or explain like why I like email so much, even though it's a bit of a oxymoron in some ways, because I mean, who here doesn't open up their inbox and think like, oh God, I've just got like so much in my inbox going on, right? Like email feels overwhelming, and I hear all the time, it's like, oh, I've got too many emails. I'm just like, everybody's got too much emails. Well, that is true that there's a lot of email out there, but how much of that you're getting into your inbox is totally controllable. So I'm not going to go far into how to deal with your inbox because that's a whole nother subject. But if you're feeling overwhelmed by the amount of email that you're getting in your inbox, don't let that color your perception of the value and effectiveness of email. Just because your inbox is overflowing and you're way behind on your email doesn't mean that everybody else is having the same experience. So just that's something to keep in mind. The second thing I want to explain is that when I'm talking about email marketing, I'm talking about both email that you send direct to someone from within your inbox, right? So I would be sending it from lisa@paraphrasecom.com. That's my email address. That's a direct email. Or there's broadcast email, and that's like sending out your newsletter. Okay, so the things I'm going to talk about right now with email marketing pertain to both. So when I think about email marketing, I'm including those direct messages that you're sending from your inbox to somebody else, and that could be a response to a referral inquiry, it could be a cold outreach, it could be a follow-up email, like all of that I would throw into the email marketing category of things. So just that distinction, right? So direct email and broadcast email. All right. One of the big reasons why I love email so much as a really prime channel, and this is the reason why it's a prime channel for many individuals and businesses, because, well, you own it, first of all, and that's not the main reason why I love it so much, but you do own it in a way that you don't in other channels, right? So your social media followers, communities you might have set up on different social channels, you don't own that. Even a LinkedIn newsletter, you don't own that list of subscribers. And so there's that to consider. But what I really like about email is that it's a permission-based channel, meaning people have agreed to hear from you. So you've already gotten a yes from them. And then obviously, if they don't want to hear from you anymore, they just unsubscribe. No big deal. But it's permission-based. And as such, it's kind of like more of a closed environment where you can really be you in a way that I think a lot of people don't feel comfortable being in social media when the content can just be for anybody and anybody can run across it, right? It's just like totally at the mercy of the algorithm. But inside email, you have so much more control over who's getting it and what you're saying and all that good stuff, right? So I personally feel like I can be more myself in my email to my email subscribers and even in one-to-one email, of course. So there's that consideration about the power and effectiveness of email. I think that's why it's such a great relationship building tool when you can just like relax into being yourself or from your inbox into other people's inboxes. Okay. So the next thing I want to touch on is the fact that people read emails out of order. So when I'm working with clients on putting together like email marketing campaigns, like maybe we're going to promote a course or an event or whatever it might be, there's often questions that come up about like, well, what should I say in this email, like email day 1 versus email day 7 or whatever. And the truth of the matter is it doesn't really matter, because people will read email out of order. I mean, do you, when you go into your inbox, are you reading literally from like, from the morning that when you got into your inbox all the way like chronologically through the day, and even in, the days of the week? No, you're skipping around, you move email around, you save email for later, you think you're going to read it later and you don't, all that kind of stuff. So everybody's reading email in kind of a different order. So it doesn't really matter in a campaign what day you're saying when, except for if you've got a deadline, right? So if you have a deadline for something, registration, signups, enrollment, whatever it is, if you have a deadline, then yeah, of course you need to be aware of sending out emails at the right time for the deadline, and that as such you need to be really clear in your subject line that there is a deadline. So if you have any sort of deadline driven content, then it's a really good idea to make note of that in the subject line. And I would definitely say the subject line versus the preview text. And the preview text is for some people in their email clients, and that would be whatever software they're using to read their emails, it will display like a little snippet of like what the email might be about. That's the preview text. So don't worry. When you're doing campaigns, don't worry about in what order you're sending the information. The important thing is that over the arc of the campaign, have you covered all the bases, right? So obviously that's going to be dependent upon what it is that you are promoting, but just again, know that the order of that information doesn't really matter so much, because it's not going to be consumed necessarily in that order. Okay, so that kind of leads me to my next point, which is the subject lines themselves can do almost all the work of the actual email. By that I mean, when somebody sees your email in their inbox, again, whether it is a broadcast email, it's like your newsletter that's going out, or it's an email you're sending one-to-one to someone direct from your inbox, when they see you land in their inbox and they see your name and they see the subject line, that can just be enough. That can be totally do the job for like keeping you on their radar. And even if depending on what the content of the email is, the subject line itself might just be enough to know exactly what's inside the email. I particularly like this approach when it's one-to-one email, for sure. It sometimes can be a little harder with broadcast email, because you might the contents of that email might cover a variety of different things. But nevertheless, just imagine that the email subject line serves a lot of value as even if it doesn't get opened. Okay, so pay attention to your subject lines. They really do matter. And in fact, I have a whole mini course on headlines and email subject lines and all of that, because those little one-liners are so critical to getting the opens, to getting the eyeballs, all of that kind of good stuff. So that's the power of the email subject line. The next thing I want to mention is that the content of the email, the body, let's just call it the body of the email, when you open up the email and there's all the information, you really also want to pay attention to the formatting for this email. So if you're in a one-to-one email send, again, that's so you personally are sending direct from your inbox to somebody else's, and you have a lot of information you want to give them, it's really important to, as much as you can, format that content so that it's really skimmable and readable. And you can do this straight within your inbox. You don't have to have any special tools. Every single email client out there has basic tools for formatting, but really consider your use of bolding, different size fonts, characters, special characters like dashes and asterisks and things like that to separate out content. You can do a lot with email formatting just with using the tools that are inside your email client. So like, let's say if you're using Gmail or Outlook or whatever it is, Macmail, they all have just the basic tools for formatting. Make use of those. Okay. Especially for those hefty, like emails that have a lot of content to them. Now, I do recommend as much as possible, you try to be succinct with your emails. If there's an ask you're making, especially if it's a direct email, you put that ask up front, and then you can kind of circle back with like the basis for your ask afterwards. So that's just a tip for those type of emails. Now, when you're in a broadcast email situation, you usually have tools already, again, built into whatever email service provider you're using to put some nice formatting in there. You can still have a largely text-based email. You don't have to get fancy with design. In fact, my emails are pretty simple. They're usually mostly text-based. I do sometimes use colored boxes. I do try to fit in images now and then. I mix it up a little bit, but it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty basic. I personally love using emojis, so that's sometimes those get sprinkled in there. That's just a personal preference, and there's no right or wrong when it comes to emojis. But there's, like I said, there's usually more tools at your disposal for doing some more fancy kind of formatting in the broadcast email. But it's not necessary. I've seen plenty of emails coming in from email marketing providers or email marketers that are just text, and they're great, right? They do a really great job. Okay. So the other thing I want to mention about formatting for your email is that there are different parts of the email to think about. And I have an article, I'm going to link to the article. I'll put it in the body of this post so that you can go check it out. It's going to lead me to one of my next points to make, which is if you feel it. So the article is called "If You Feel Sick About Sending That Last Email, That's About Right." Okay, that's the title of that article. But in that article, one of the tips I'm sharing is how you can look at the different parts of the email. I'm looking at the article right here. So I'm just like reminding myself of like, yeah, I have a diagram in there that shows the different sections of an email and how to think about using these different sections to call attention to different types of content, or just the fact that there's more to an email than just the subject line and the body. There's more to an email, and that's good because that allows you to create a hierarchy, a visual hierarchy of the information. So again, if you've got an email that you're sending out that has like a lot of information, just knowing like you can use the postscript area, you can use the area below your signature line. Like there's a lot of different ways to structure the email so that it's legible and digestible, because that's a big thing with emails. Like we want it to be pretty, we want it to be easy to read. That doesn't mean that it has to be short all the time. You could have really long emails. I subscribe to a number of people who email, and their emails are quite long, but the content, I'm so interested in it, I read the full email. I'm happy to. There's one person I'm subscribed to. His emails are really, really, really long. I mean, I'm not even sure how he's able to send out the emails without the email itself getting truncated, because that will happen if it's just too long. But don't worry about the length of the email. It's more about how are you formatting the email, okay? So think about formatting over length when it comes to the email, because if the content is relevant and it is useful and it is valuable, it will get read, okay? All right, so that leads me to my last point here, which is send that last email. Send the email when you get to that point, especially with if you're running a campaign and you're like, oh, I really don't want to send another email. Doesn't everybody already know about this thing already? They're sick of me by now. When you get to that point, it's time to send at least one more email. And then I also recommend send one more than that. Okay. So this is why the title of my article that I'm going to link to is called when you're like sick of the email, you're like, it almost makes you sick to the stomach to send that last email. That's about right. That's about the right amount. The reason is because so many people wait until the deadline, till the last moment to make the purchase, do the enroll, register, whatever it is that and this is obviously very pertinent to email campaigns, but it's also true when it comes to sending email, if it just from the one to one, direct from your inbox to someone, like when you're, especially when you're doing follow up email, you're checking in, like maybe you had a conversation with a prospect and it ran cold, or they just have been ghosting you and you're like, I don't know if I should bother them. Yes, send the email. Send the email and read my article so you can feel like a little bolstered about sending the email. I cannot tell you how many times it's happened that I too get to that point where I'm like, oh, do I really need to send that last email? And I make myself do it because I got to walk my talk. And that's when those last sales come in. And as a receiver from so many people's emails, because I study email a lot and I'm on a lot of people's email lists, I cannot tell you also how often I see people promoting things and they just send one, maybe two emails. They might send one email on the last day, but even then, sometimes I don't see that. I might see them mention the thing and then there's a deadline associated with it, and then I never see another email about it. Now, it's possible I've just been filtered out, I've been segmented out of receiving further emails, but it happens so often that I don't see any more emails that I think it's just a matter of people feeling like I don't need to send any more emails. And I'm here to tell you, yes, you do. You do need to send more emails. Listen, if people are really sick of hearing from you, they will just unsubscribe, and that's fine. That's totally fine. In fact, I've got another article, 5 ways to love your unsubscribes. So if you're at a point where it just hurts your heart to see those unsubscribes, then I want you to read that article too. So I'll link to it also here in this post so that you can just feel better about letting those people go. It's totally fine. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So I'd love to hear any questions you have or thoughts or takeaways after you've watched this about email. Like how is it for you with your email marketing? What are the things that you get hung up on, or maybe the areas of email where you just feel like you're totally rocking it? I'd love to hear that too. So please drop that in the comments where you're watching this, and I will catch you